I had gone from conservative evangelical Christianity to a more progressive social justice kind of Christianity. I am a bridge. I have receipts. No one can tell me, you need to see both sides. I'm like, listen, I've written as many conservative Christian books as you have read. I don't need to see the other side. I was there. But anytime I'm tempted to be so angry, I remind myself, Marla, if you had not run into Rachel Held Evans, not met Rob Bell, not been brave enough to read these books, this is the natural trajectory of where you would have been.
Welcome to Created Creative. I'm Dawn.
And I'm Ruth.
And we have such a big update from Ruth.
We'll probably talk about this more in a future episode, but as Dawn knows, I was in the hospital the last few days, and it was basically a virus that attacked my nerves, and I'm regaining feeling in my hands and feet now. It was like the craziest thing. But yeah, it's taken a lot of creativity now. To learn.
How do you do things?
Yeah, literally, how do I do things, and what can I do, and what am I needing to do a little therapy to learn to do again? And so,
Yay for science.
Yes, yay for science.
Someone knows what to do.
Yeah, there's been a lot of creativity the last days in ways that I never expected in this month of creative challenge. Boy, talk about challenge.
But we are so capable of being creative once a new parameter is put on our life. I know this is well beyond a parameter. You had to go to the hospital and had some treatment, but now there's some guardrails for just temporary, as far as I understand.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Thankful to be doing really well, but it does take a little bit of creativity when you have numbness in your hands and feet to just learn to maneuver really everyday things. So,
But you got onto this broadcast.
Yes.
So yay.
And back.
You're functioning.
Oh my gosh, I feel so good. Yeah, I can operate my mouse, so I'm focusing on just getting back in the groove.
So Marla.
Yeah, we're so glad she could be with us. What a great interview.
Such a good interview. And she approached us, which was a fun thing that hasn't happened much.
I know. So if there's other brilliant authors and creators out there, you can always approach us to be on the show.
We're probably open.
Probably, yeah. But this was great. And I think people are really going to enjoy hearing her story.
So here's Marla.
Here's Marla.
Yay.
Nice to meet you. And thank you for the books you sent.
You're welcome.
You are someone that neither Dawn or I have met before, and we're so glad to meet you now. And I'm wondering if we could begin by you sharing a little bit about yourself for our listeners.
My name is Marla Taviano, and I am down here in Columbia, South Carolina. I lived in Ohio for 39 years, Cambodia for 5 years, and now South Carolina for 5. I am a single mom of 3 young adult daughters. They're 24, 22, and 19. And I am a writer, a poet, an editor, an artist, and I have 2 cats. And actually, one of them threw up this morning, and the other one just threw up 1 minute ago. And I yelled to someone to please help her while I do the podcast.
You live with someone in South Carolina.
All of my kids live with me, and so do my cats. We have a full house.
Oh, that's nice.
Ruth has cats. She understands.
I'm a cat person, so my ears perked up when you said you had cats.
I had cats as a kid and not for about 30 years, and then we just got them a couple years ago.
You were so nice to approach us because I know that you're on a podcast spree. Is it your goal to do 50 podcasts? Is that right?
Yes, I will be turning 50 on Halloween 2025. So this year, I just decided I wanted to set some kind of big goal. And part of it is I want to get the word out about my books. Also, just meeting new people and talking about things we love. I've considered starting my own podcast. I just don't think I have it in me. I think you all are amazing for doing it. So I thought I can just mooch off everybody else's podcast.
Not mooching. We're happily sharing.
Happily sharing. Exactly.
Yeah.
This is interview number 11. I'm ahead of schedule. I've got plenty of time to get 50 in 2025. I'm
that's
excited.
Wonderful.
We're happy to be a prime number.
Love it.
All right. You seem perfect for this podcast, the things that you write and what you're about. And so tell us, have you always been a writer?
I learned to read when I was 4. My mom says Sesame Street taught me how to read. I have always been writing. I am sad I don't have all of that writing still. I have poems I wrote in first grade. I didn't write poetry again until I was in my 40s, but I wish I had my pink diary I used to write in. I wish I had all the books that I would make out of notebook paper and cut up the JCPenney catalog and make stories and write those down. I don't have all of that. I'm trying to remember. In this 50th year, I'm reflecting by reading books I read as a child, finding them at thrift stores, which is fun. I just started the first Babysitter's Club book. I was shocked because Christy, whose big idea it was to start the Babysitter's Club, I didn't remember this, but her dad left and married somebody else and didn't really help with child support and forgot her 12th birthday. And that is my daughter's experience with their father. And I thought, I didn't think about it when I was 11 and reading these books because I had a very happy family and my dad was awesome. And so I'm seeing some of this in a different light, but I'm trying to read things that bring back memories. This is one of them. My grandma sold World Book encyclopedias and childcraft. This is the 1975 edition. The year I was born is when my parents bought this. And volume 11 is called Make and Do. And when I opened this up after I bought it at the Goodwill for $2, the feelings inside of me, I'm telling you, I remember I would take my sisters, brother, and cousins through these, make all these crafts, do all these games. They were my guinea pigs, and I loved it. So now I'm taking my poetry, I'm putting it together with kids' book illustrations, and it feels very much a full circle of what I used to do.
Yes, you sent some of those to me and tucked in the pages of the book. So that's really cool. They're all different, right? You can't make the same of anything. Have your own laminator.
I have a paper cutter, a laminator, and the Goodwills near our house. All the kids' books are 50 cents. And then I'll go to library sales, and our library will sometimes get rid of books that they have too many of or they're damaged, which is fine for me because I'm taking them apart anyway. I have a big collection, and it's fun. There's something about having the poems I've already written. So I've got 3 books of poetry that each have over 200 poems in them. And then seeing an illustration, and it just hits me. This would match that illustration, that juxtaposition of words. It's like memes made by hand. Lately, after the events of the past few weeks, I'm just putting the F word on like Oscar the Grouch and Frog and Toad.
Yes.
I don't really have the words, but this is how I feel right now. It's been a lot of fun.
You had mentioned in one of the books that you sent that you unschooled your kids. Is that right?
Yes.
We want to know everything.
Well,
We want to know.
we're interested because Dawn has a young daughter and she's figuring out her educational journey, and we're interested in your journey with unschooling.
I actually have 2 ebooks out, but I was a different person then. I've been reworking the first one and scrapping the second one. It's called an Unschooling Manifesto. And it's funny because it was from 2014 and people are finding it. Every month I'm selling copies of this book, and I don't talk about this at all, but I'm rewriting it. So the basic story is that I went to a Christian school from preschool, kindergarten, first grade. And then my mom homeschooled me 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. So this is in the early 80s. She didn't really know anybody that was homeschooling. I don't know how much Christianity played into her decision. My first grade teacher wanted me to skip to 2nd grade because I already knew everything.
Yeah.
And I did not want to do it because my friends in 2nd grade already learned cursive and I didn't know cursive. That's the only reason I didn't want to go to 2nd grade. My mom decided to homeschool me and then went to public school from 5th through 12th grade.
But did you learn cursive in
I did.
home? To
I
close
did.
that loop
Okay.
of the story.
Do I use cursive now? No, my daughters did not learn cursive. I personally think cursive is ridiculous. Other people can feel however they want to feel about that. Yeah, so then I finished college in 3 years. I went on to teach in a Christian school, then a public school. I felt at the age of 22, 23, that I was very wise, that I knew what the best thing was. And so I told my newish husband that when we had kids, I was definitely going to homeschool them. He looked at me like, no, that's not going to happen. Then I had them and I decided maybe I do want them to go to school. But as it turned out, I had a 5th grader, a 4th grader, and an afternoon kindergarten. Anyway, I never ever got my time where they were all out of the house all day. We brought them home to be homeschooled right on the verge of, I'll have this free time. My ex-husband friend had a heart attack, almost died. We went to Cambodia, all this stuff. And we just decided it's best for our family if we can all be together and homeschool. So we started in fall 2012. I didn't have any money for curriculum, so I pieced together things. And then eventually, it gradually but quickly morphed into unschooling. I didn't have the term for it at the time, but it was pretty much, what do you want to learn? What do you care about? Let's do that, because everything else feels pointless and ridiculous to me. So that has always been my thing. Why am I doing this? What's the point of this? And I would ask that at school, in Sunday school, at home. And I'd had people say to me, your kids need to have experience doing things they don't want to do. Yes, they clean their rooms, do the dishes. Then their dad had a heart attack. They lost their house. All of these things they did not want. They learned how to survive. Diagramming sentences, I don't think that's, again, if people want to do that, more power to them. I have written books. People have complimented me on my writing many times, and never once have I asked myself when I write a sentence, does this have a subject? Does it have a predicate? There are other ways to do it. My ex-husband and I both have college degrees, but mine is in elementary education. His was in graphic design. He taught himself web design because when he graduated in 1999, that wasn't really a thing. So he didn't learn that in college. I didn't go to school to be a writer or an editor. It's just something that comes naturally to me. So we're both kind of poster children for, sure, you can go to college if you want, but that's not how I'm getting my money. I write for people now. I ghostwrite for entrepreneurs. Not one single person has ever asked me, do you have a college degree? So much of it doesn't matter. My daughters at this point, one is on her way to becoming a tattoo artist. One is a personal trainer, and one is figuring out what she wants to do, but they all do different forms of art. They have all sold their art. My youngest will edit for me when I'm writing for someone. She's 16, 17, editing on a professional level, and I'm paying her a portion of what I'm getting paid. If they want to go to college, they can, but it's not necessary. So I am gearing up to get this book back out in the world with updates. I'm actually going to a secular homeschool conference in Raleigh, North Carolina in August with my friend who sells books with Liberation is Lit. I'm hoping to have the book ready. There'll be people there who care to hear about unschooling and my experience. I've got a lot of irons in the fire, but that one has taken priority at the moment since I have a reason for getting that back out in the world.
Were you connected to Ohio when you did this?
Yes, I did it in Ohio. So the girls, the public school that they went to was amazing. And their kindergarten teacher requested each of them in turn. And she became a dear friend. So we partnered with her. In Ohio at the time, you could take a test at the end of the year as a homeschooler or have a certified teacher evaluate you. That's what we did for the 3 years before we moved to Cambodia. Ms. Calhoun sat on the balcony with our daughters one at a time and asked them what they knew and what they've learned. So it was very easy. You had to keep a log of your hours. I joke, I write about this in the book, but my youngest in first grade had this composition notebook and was supposed to write things down. We were very loose about what we were doing. We went to the zoo, that's science. She would come to me with her composition notebook and be like, Mom, what did we do last Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? Listen, I don't remember any of that. You're going to have to either figure it out or make something up. Yeah, like I said, it morphed into unschooling quickly. In Cambodia, no one was paying attention to us or keeping track of us. So when we moved back to the States in 2020, I had 2 that were graduating age, so they were fine. My youngest decided she wanted to go to public school and possibly college. In September of 2020, their dad unexpectedly left. This is at the beginning of the pandemic. So her school started the next day. She went online and then had some struggles with depression. So she ended up doing 2 years online. And as soon as she turned 17, she dropped out, took the GED, and passed with the highest level. I have nothing against public schools. I love so many of them. I have a hard time with people trying to shut down the Department of Education. It's a privileged thing to homeschool or unschool your kids. I worked from home, so I could do it, and they were largely self-taught. Khan Academy was a gift to us. It's a free website. That's how any one of them that wanted to learn math taught themselves. 2 of the 3 studied for the GED and passed it. My oldest has been busy with her art and tattooing, but she plans to do that one of these days soon.
I'm in a state where that's illegal, and so
Okay.
it's especially fun to hear the way you did it.
Yeah. I'm also careful because I'm learning about homeschooled kids who are now adults, who were neglected, who had to take care of their siblings and never got to learn anything, especially the girls. So that's also a new thing that I'm reworking into the new edition of the book is listen, this is about more freedom for your kids,
Right.
not less
Suppression.
freedom. This is not about public schools are bad because they're woke and they're teaching about racism. This is, I'm teaching my kids about racism. I want to honor the hurtful stories of homeschooling that needed more regulation. It's very tricky, very nuanced. It's why I've been putting off rewriting it for so long because I wanted to make sure that I covered all the bases. I can't do that, so I'm just going to give it my best shot.
Sure.
Yeah, it is so different from state to state. When I lived in Texas for a while and homeschooled for a bit, there was no regulation over it. All I had to do, because my boys had been in school, I had to go in person to unenroll them.
I did that too.
Yeah. Otherwise, there was nothing I had to turn in at the end of the year or tests they had to pass.
Wow.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Here, you have to turn in a whole year's syllabus and every 9 weeks prove they've done those things. You have some freedom to choose what that is, but then you have to do it. And then there's minimum hours and minimum number of days.
That's a lot.
So it's super fun to hear the
It
other
is.
end of the spectrum. It's fascinating for me to hear, and I love your reasons. You're wanting them to have a more rich and diverse experience than the structures of the school.
Yeah. It was pretty great.
Yeah.
Could you say the title of that ebook you wrote?
An Unschooling Manifesto. You can buy it for $2.99 right now. It'll be better when it comes out. It's
Buy
funny
it twice.
because
Everyone buy it twice.
yeah, I went through a phase of deconstruction and I was waking up to social justice and all of that. So I had gone from conservative evangelical Christianity to a more progressive social justice kind of Christianity. Reading back now from where I'm at, some of those words still made me cringe about my kids doing work for the kingdom and being a light. Just take some of this lingo out that I don't resonate with anymore. I'm struggling to figure out how to write it. I want to keep a lot of it in that voice I used in 2014 because I was telling the story as it happened. I've added some 2025 notes. I'm going to run it by a few friends as beta readers to be like, okay, does this make sense? Can you track with this? Because I want it to be true to how I felt then, but also looking back on it. Anyway, yeah, I'm excited.
We're on the progressive end of Christianity. I know you're not newly arriving, but we're glad to have you.
Yes.
How does, I realize it's a whole book, but tell our readers the genesis
Yeah.
of
Yes.
that movement. I know it's a whole lifetime thing,
Yeah.
but can you put it into a nutshell for us?
I was so zealous. I don't know if you've read Rachel Held Evans's books, but she was the one who gave me permission to start questioning things. I'll often look back at things I believed and ask myself, Marla, you are intelligent. How did you believe this certain thing? What I'm realizing is that I just believed so much that it was right and correct that I would just try to figure out all the ways that I could make it be okay, that I could justify it, that I could explain it. And so I think it was in 2010, her book came out. It was called Evolving in Monkeytown first, and they changed it later to Faith Unraveled. She was just as zealous as I was and was starting to question things about her gay friends or her Muslim friends, different things about white supremacy. When I got up enough courage to read her book, I told myself, if she's wrong, great. But what if she's right? Why are you so afraid of what she's going to say? I really resonated with that. And I give her credit for changing the trajectory of my life. I read The Hole in Our Gospel by Richard Stearns. And he's either over world vision or compassion. I forget which one. But he was saying how we say the good news is that Jesus died on the cross for our sins so we don't go to hell. But how is that good news to an AIDS orphan in Uganda? What is that doing for that little child right now, today? Because I grew up, Republicans were Christians, Democrats were not. They wanted to feed people, but what about their salvation? That's what really mattered. And it just hit me that, okay, wow, that makes a lot of sense. I've gotten over the years so much pushback when I say there's a hole in our gospel or our gospel is missing something. People don't like that. They want this simple Jesus died on the cross to save your sins, accept him, and you go to heaven. That's it.
There's no response. It's easy.
That's the part that I started to realize. That's also why I made the transition from being pro-life to pro-choice, because I was realizing those same people who called themselves pro-life and supposedly cared so much about unborn babies did not care about born babies. They did not care about mothers. They loved guns, like all of these things. I'm like, oh, I get it. You like to rail against something. You don't have to actually do it.
And
This makes
the
sense.
unborn baby never talks back.
No. From there, we helped a Black pastor friend plant a multi-ethnic church in Columbus, Ohio. In 2012, when Trayvon Martin was killed, and one of my new Black friends said on Facebook, "Why aren't my white friends talking about this?" I had no idea what she meant. I started doing some research. That opened up a whole new thing, realizing how much white privilege I had to not know about police brutality, Jim Crow laws, segregation or discrimination. It snowballed. So that slippery slope they warn you about is a real thing, like the unraveling sweater. Or it used to scare me, and now it doesn't scare me at all. I write poems about how it's just not scary down here. It's better. And it's not that I'm down here anyway. They want to think you're at the top and you're going down. And another poem I have talks about, no, actually, I was at the bottom where I couldn't see the whole picture. I've climbed to the top. And I can see now what's happening. I can see perspectives I didn't have before. And also, when people want to know, where have you landed? Then I say, I feel like I'm a bird now. I might alight on a branch here and there, but I don't have to land. I can fly and see all of this. My sister disowned me in 2017, largely from things I said on Facebook. I wasn't even a heretic back then. It's funny now because the things now where I don't even necessarily identify as a Christian, she had already disowned me just from talking about racism, accepting my gay friends. And one big thing was that when we lived in Cambodia, we had these bamboo libraries that we raised the money and the locals built them, and teenagers would staff the libraries and kids could learn to read and learn English. And we made a decision to not proselytize kids in these libraries. My reasoning was it's not fair. Like, these families are bringing them to learn things. They didn't give their permission to change their religion or tell them that their kid's religion is bad. What if you took your kid to story time at the library in Illinois and it was a Muslim teacher who was telling them all the things that they actually had to do to get to heaven or to have true faith? And people would push back and say, we have the truth. Islam isn't the truth. I'm like, no, that's not.
Every world religion has the truth.
Exactly. So my sister disowned me, lost a lot of people in my life. She's really the only one I care about. Everybody, it made it easier that we moved away. People were disowning me and unfriending me from across the globe, but it did make it easier. I wasn't running into these people at Target on the other side of the planet. Okay, so my ex-husband left in September 2020 after we moved back to the States. Then in January 2021, I found out he had been cheating on me for 4 of the 5 years we lived in Cambodia. Started writing poetry. I was trying to write about my deconstruction in prose like I'd done all my other writing. My mind and heart kept changing. I kept going. I couldn't get it to stay on the page. It just wasn't working. And when people ask me, how did you decide to switch to poetry? I can't always pinpoint it, but just a couple weeks ago, I was rereading a Rob Bell book called Everything is Spiritual.
We had him on this podcast.
I love him. Read it in 2021. I write in the margins of every nonfiction book I read. At one point, I had written in the margins of 2021, that's it. I'm writing poetry. I'm changing this to poetry. Maybe it was Rob Bell that convinced me. But I started pulling out pieces, putting it into poems. It's unconventional poetry. It doesn't rhyme, which I know poetry doesn't have to rhyme, but it's not very ambiguous. It's not flowery. Some of it is just, here's a Facebook post and I reworked it and made it look like a poem. I have a shirt that says, anything can be a poem if you make it all lowercase, break up the lines. And it's exactly how I feel. That's what I've been doing for the last few years, writing poetry. I think I'm ready to get back into prose now. It's been great for so many reasons. People's attention spans are shorter. Some people have told me they've read it like a quote unquote daily devotional, a poem each morning. When I pair it with art and I put it online, these can be poems people have seen over and over again, but something just hits in a different way because it's with an illustration that you remember from childhood. Frog and Toad have been so good to me. Like, they have so many great ways that they match up with the poems. Sesame Street is one of my favorites.
Who are some of your favorite creators?
My favorite people are people who write about creativity or write about writing. That's
Okay.
another thing on my list that I want to do. I've written What Makes You Fart, which is all about creativity, but I also want to write a book specifically about writing. It's funny to me that I want to read a book about writing. So, longtime favorite, Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. And
Anne
funny
Lamott,
story
yep.
about this one, I actually just reread it for maybe the 7th time. I bought a new edition because I was running out of colors that I could write in this one. I do a different color each time I read. And back when I first read it in maybe 2010, I had crossed out all the times she used cuss words. Because back then I did not do that. A few years later, I wrote them all back in. This is so great. Maggie Smith is a newer favorite of mine. Her Keep Moving book, so much writing in all the pages. She talks about creativity. Her memoir, You Can Make This Place Beautiful, is about her husband cheating on her and leaving. That's the book that I wish I would have written. I still may write about that, but it won't be as great as Maggie. This book, I think I read it a long time ago, but I didn't keep it. And I just found it again, Writing Down the Bones by
So
Natalie
good.
Goldberg. I just started rereading. Remembered Rapture, The Writer at Work, is by Bell Hooks. And it's so good. She's talking about a few years ago, I started specifically reading books by Black authors, particularly Black women. Many of the people she's referencing, I've read their work. So that's also exciting to me. Joy Harjo is an Indigenous poet. And Catching the Light is about the why of writing poetry. I've read her poetry, but I love her prose about her poetry even more than I love her poetry. Steal Like an Artist. Just found this in Goodwill too, but I already had this set. It's so good. Austin Kleon is basically saying that we should steal from everybody. And it's not really stealing. It's where are we getting our inspiration? Glennon Doyle once said that reading is her inhale and writing her exhale. I get so many ideas and inspiration from people. I try really hard to take note of it. And in my books, I have a huge notes section if anyone inspired me or I'm quoting them or any of that. And two more. Haruki Murakami, novelist as a vocation. I am not a novelist, but this book is delightful. I've read his novels, and the way he writes about writing is gorgeous. Octavia Butler by Linnell George. A Handful of Earth, A Handful of Sky, The World of Octavia E. Butler. She wrote The Parable of the Sower, which I've been sharing online. She wrote it in 1993. It takes place in 2025. There are dates like February 1st, 2025, or there's the day after the election, November 6th, 2024, and it's someone has just gotten elected and they're not happy about it. She has to sell her typewriter to make money, but she wants to be a best-selling author. I love the scrappiness, and she doesn't know if she's going to succeed, and that's how I feel right now. Gretchen Rubin, Outer Order, Inner Calm. Your outside helping your inside is exactly what I need.
Fellow Enneagram 1.
Yes.
You must love her.
Then I also found this at the thrift store, What to Do When Your Mom or Dad Says Clean Your Room. These are Christian books, I think. I got them from the church library when I was a kid. My grandma's the librarian. It tells you, get everything out of all your drawers, put all on your bed, put it away one by one. I would read it and do it, but the problem is I would get it all on my bed, then it would be time for bed, so I'd dump it on the floor. My dad came in my room once with a yard rake. Raked everything into a pile and said, listen, this is ridiculous. Clean this up. To his credit, we lived in an old farmhouse. There was a bat in my bedroom once. There were mice in my bedroom. He probably just didn't want wildlife making their home in my piles of things. I found that I've always loved to read about creativity. I love to read about having order. I love to read about writing. And I'll just go through and reread my favorite ones, add in new ones. I could have made this pile 10 times higher, but I knew you didn't want me to just list book titles.
It's a whole podcast.
Wonderful. And how much of creativity do you think is discipline and how much is inspiration?
I have limitless inspiration. I have so many ideas. I probably have a list of 12 books that I'm either rewriting, writing, working on that I want to publish. I read so much and I take notes so often. So discipline is actually very important because otherwise I would just be collecting ideas for eternity and I would never turn them into something. So I am pretty proud of myself for the fact that I have 6 books published from 2021 to 2024. That means I had the discipline to finish the book. and do the work. I'm hoping I can keep doing that right now. Like I was telling you about the Unschooling Manifesto, that wasn't at the top of my list. I had another one I was working on, and then another one, and then this one. I need to focus, have the discipline, sit down, get it done, and then I can do another one. I write 30 minutes at a time, and even that, I will find myself checking my phone, and so I have to put my phone somewhere else. But the 30-minute block is what generally works for me, and I'm trying this year to have 2 30-minute blocks of writing every day. I also write for my job, which makes it harder because on some days I just can't use my brain anymore. Ideally, I would love to have written 1,000 hours of my own stuff this year, but I'm starting smaller. I'm a couple days behind. I write it on my calendar each time I do 30 minutes. That is my discipline. Knowing I'm going to this homeschooling conference in August helps me get this book done. People ask me how I write poetry. I don't sit down and just write a poem. I really am collecting things, pulling things in, ideas, or I am taking something that was a paragraph and I'm carving away everything that's not the poem. Giving myself material to work with instead of just coming off the top of my head. If I'm journaling or doing a free write, I could write forever, but when I'm specifically writing for a project, it's because I've pulled from everywhere. And the Unschooling Manifesto is my favorite kind of work, where it's already there. I'm just taking out things I don't want, adding things I do. And I have a lot more of those I can do that with as well.
Yeah, that's so great. And I am excited to hear your answer to this question. How do you see creativity and spirituality connect?
I really love this question. A lot of my writing is about spirituality, faith, deconstruction. I'm writing about things that would fall into the category maybe of spirituality. But what I've really been excited about lately, like I said, getting in touch with my younger self, who she was, what I see in her, and getting to know myself now, because I can see her then. And in What Makes You Fart, in that book, I talk about if you can't find your passion, what did you love when you were a kid? I loved books. I made a library in my room for my siblings. It doesn't always work perfectly where you can point to a thing in your childhood, but for me, that has really been the case. So getting in touch with my younger self, finding out who the true me is, getting to know her, that feels spiritual to me. So the sister who disowned me did not like Enneagram, any kind of personality test, because the way she framed it was like, we should die to self and Christ in us was the only thing that mattered. So she would just get to know Christ and she didn't need to get to know herself.
Wow.
And I see sad, but I want to flip. Let's say I am created in God's image, right? I could find out about me by looking to God, but could I also find out about God by looking to me? If I am created in God's image, then some of the secrets are inside this being that God created. And again, with Christianity, I don't know how I feel about creation, the Bible, and the divine, but I do believe in something. When I point back to the Bible and creation, talking to either Christians like you or other Christians, that resonates with me. It's right there. It says we were created in God's image. So God has to be in me, not in the way they think, where you say a prayer and then God's in you. Still working that out and realizing I have the freedom to think, believe, change my mind, when before I was so worried. Anytime I had a doubt, I had to immediately figure out how to explain it away, how to be unshakable in my faith. Now it's all good.
The doubts are welcome.
Yeah.
It's part of it.
Yes, especially when they add beauty and depth to everything. When you can ask, why not? Or have we looked at it this way? I've had friends tell me, I see God in you, Marla, and they'll apologize because they know I quit God. Like, don't be offended, but I see God in you. One of my kids told me, people see God in you more now than they did when you were this really strict Christian, which should tell you, So if there is a God, I'm not worried that God is going to say, you didn't do this right and you're going to hell. Because if that God would send me to hell, I don't care. I'll live my whole entire life loving people. When I get to the pearly gates and that God sends me to hell, fine. If that's not the God that really exists and there is a pearly gates and there is that, then I'm going to be fine because I am loving people like Jesus said to love people, but I don't need Jesus to do it. People have been loving people for a long time without following the Bible.
I keep thinking that you must have an interesting perspective because in the times in which we live right now, I get so frustrated I could tear my hair out at some of the things that Christians post about in our political climate. And it's hard for me to understand how some people see Christianity. From my perspective, it makes sense to welcome the stranger and love people. That's who I see in Jesus. You've lived with conservative Christians, so you see landscape differently than a lot of us because you've been on both sides.
Yeah, I'm jealous of people like you who never lived that kind, but I also realize that I am in a unique position. I am a bridge. I have receipts. No one can tell me, you need to see both sides, the conservative side. I'm like, listen, I've written as many conservative Christian books as you have read. I don't need to see the other side. I was there. There's a lot, just that binary thinking anyway is part of what's causing all this trouble. But anytime I get really angry at these people and I don't see their stuff, they either left or I'm a happy part of the internet.
Yeah.
Anytime I see that, I'm tempted to be so angry. I remind myself, Marla, if you had not run into Rachel Held Evans, not met Rob Bell, not been brave enough to read these books, this is the natural trajectory of where you would have been. I want to believe I would have gotten off at any number of stops before it got to this. But I can't say that for sure. And I have people coming to me who did get off at stops farther down than I did. Friends who unfriended me on Facebook because I was talking about racism too much in 2016. Then when George Floyd is murdered in 2020, coming back and saying, oh, now I get it. I understand. Can we be friends again? A lot of people, I don't know what they're doing. I don't start fights. I don't get into it with people who have no desire to change their mind. I am here for the people who have the doubts, who have questions, who are wondering. I've had queer people come out to me as the first person they came out to. I've had people from my past say, my daughter came out as gay. Can I love her and still be in the church? Those are the people I'm here for, to be that kind of bridge. I see a lot of value in the way I share my knowledge of scripture. But some people, you can tell them there are 2,000 verses in the Bible about loving the poor. They don't care. Verses about the foreigner. They don't care. Jesus never said a word about anybody being gay. They don't care. It's super frustrating.
Well, belonging to a group is always going to be a stronger pull
You're right.
than any factual thing you can say. It's belonging to the group and identifying with it.
And you invested so much of your life and time into it. That's how it is with my sister. If she were to break off now, it's just too much. The cognitive dissonance, they can't handle it. Trying to show grace, being gentle, being kind. I was brash when I first started talking about racism, like, we're all racist.
And then it pushes too far for them.
Yeah, but I don't think there's any perfect way to do it either, because I also don't think that we need to coddle people for years and years until they're ready to not be racist anymore. Martin Luther King Jr. was writing to progressive Christians in the Birmingham jail in 1963 and saying, how long are you going to take? Clearly, they're going to take 60 more years because they're not ready. Meanwhile, everyone else is suffering. That's the thing about privilege. If you have the privilege of taking your sweet time, not everybody has that.
Right.
I wanted to allow time for Dawn, a wonderful coach, and kind of her specialty is helping people move forward in their various projects. And I was wondering if there's anything you're working on or thinking about that you could use some coaching on today.
Oh my gosh, I have like 40 things.
I love that.
I will just say this. I don't want everything I do to be on social media, especially Meta, where people who don't like me speaking up on behalf of the marginalized could shut me down very quickly. So that's part of it, wanting to be in other places. My dream is for my books to support me. Right now, it's about $100 a month, so that's not going to cut it. Other ways to supplement income. Like right now, I'm writing for other people. I'm bringing in income, whether it's courses or other things. I have ideas and I'm working through it and I don't have the time. If you have any advice, I have my pen and I'll write it down.
Yeah, both of those sound like the theme is building your platform.
Yeah.
because to get off social media and have other access to people means that you have a platform. Having lots of people buying a book or a course means, again, that you have built a platform. Building a platform, unfortunately, does require you being on one or two topics so people get what you are, and then you expand. Brene Brown, shame. Like all the people with the biggest platforms, you can put it into one or two words, and then they spiral out from there in creative ways.
Yes, I resonate with that. That's something I struggle with, like writing about deconstruction, but I don't want to be in the deconstruction sphere. I'm talking about unschooling, but my kids are big and I don't necessarily want to talk about it. I talk about writing. So yeah, finding a way that I can narrow that down, which I have fought against because there's so many things I'm passionate about, but I'm probably fighting against myself, like you're saying.
As we've spent 1 hour together, I don't know you that well. You are living outside the institutions. That seems to be a through line. Outside the unschooling, breaking free from conservative Christianity, living in Cambodia and doing good work, getting off Meta, writing the careers that I know you have young adult children and they'll pick many careers.
Yeah.
But they're not plugging into the institution. So there's something about life outside the structure that could be your platform. It's striking how much you're not plugged in.
I love that. It resonates with me. It reminds me of getting a prophecy at church or something. But yes, you nailed it as far as what I love and what matters to me, and a theme that can tie all of those things together.
Right.
So yeah, thank you. I will think about that more. I have a poem in one of my books about how I unmarried, unchurched, unschooled, like all these things. I did.
Be something in that phraseology. Thinking about it is great.
Yeah.
We're all about actually doing something. What is the first step, or should I brainstorm some first steps?
I don't know the first step.
Is it making a list of all the ways you are outside the institution to see the through line beyond what I learned about you in the last hour? Trying to find where they overlap.
Good idea. I can do that.
Unless Ruth thought of something else, because she's a
Oh, I
listener.
love that.
Okay.
Love watching the process unfold. That's a good idea, though.
Can you do it within 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Make
I can do that as soon as we get off
great.
the air.
Great.
For sure.
Good.
Thank you.
Fun.
Thank you for your time. I'm excited about all the projects you're working on and can't wait to see how they unfold.
Me neither.
But they will. There is a through line.
Thank you both. This has been fun.
Thank you for listening to Created Creative.
We're so glad that you were with us to share in creative ideas with us.
And throughout the month of February, we want to include you in the creativity.
We are having a 28-day creativity challenge, encouraging everyone to explore a new creative activity each day. No repeats, 28 different things. And then the things that you try, take a picture and post it on social media with the hashtag Created Creative Challenge.
So go to createdcreativepodcast.com to sign up for the challenge and to get a list of 100 ideas to do during your 28-day challenge.
And Dawn and I will be going live each day to share our own creative quests.
Now, but especially during February, go create something.
Go create something!